Good morning. Welcome to day 2 of the 2020 Grow New York Virtual Symposium. We are thrilled to have you joining us. My name is Kathy Young, and I serve as Executive Director of the New York State Center of Excellence for Food and Agriculture at Cornell Agritech. The Center of Excellence is a dynamic business hub for innovation and collaboration focused on growing the economy, jobs, and opportunities in New York State. We are working with entrepreneurs, startups, and existing food, beverage, and agricultural related companies to help them thrive and succeed. And if you would like to work with us, please go to our website under Cornell Agritech. The Center of Excellence leverages the unparalleled research and expertise of Cornell University to accelerate this growth and position New York State as a global leader in food and agricultural advancement. Grow New York is an outstanding example of New York's commitment to the cultural and economic importance of upstate New York's food and agricultural systems, and an ideal opportunity for Cornell University to showcase its compelling mission of bringing new thinking and new solutions to some of today's most urgent challenges. The symposium provides a forum for the Center of Excellence, our partners at Cornell Center for Regional Economic Advancement, and the Grow New York program to collaborate on finding answers to pressing questions in the food and ag space, and an opportunity for a regional food and ag community to join the conversation. We are so glad that you are with us, and I encourage you to participate through the question and answer sessions and the networking activities on the agenda. Enjoy the symposium and the pitches. Good luck to all of our companies.
Thanks, Kathy. Hi, everyone, welcome to the panel. Food waste has always been a problem, and there are a lot of different factors that drive it, from the economies of scale in the food industry to consumer preferences on taste and appearance to just the ease of handling that, quote unquote waste. But whatever the cause, right, we are growing more conscientious of our food system's impact on the environment and the need to feed a growing world population. So there's been a lot of discussion about this challenge and how it really represents an opportunity to build a more sustainable, personal health, communities, and planet. And so today I'm joined by a great panel that are taking these kind of crumbs from our food system and transforming them into nutritious, delicious feasts for consumers all over the world. It's an exciting space, but it's not easy, right? And today we're going to talk a bit more about the opportunities and challenges in trying to upcycle food waste. And I encourage everyone in the audience to feel free to ask questions throughout this discussion by typing it in the chat box. I'm going to introduce our panel today. We have Carolyn Cotto, the co-founder and CEO of Renewal Mills, and she's also the board president of the Upcycled Food Association. We've got Dan Kurzrock, who's the CEO and co-founder of ReGrained. Adam Kaye, who's the co-founder and chief culinary officer of the Spare Food Company. And I'm Sam Alcaine. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Food Science at Cornell University. And my lab, our kind of mission is to drive sustainability in dairy through fermentation, whether that's, preventing food waste through spoilage or upcycling byproducts into value-added ingredients and foods. And so today there's a lot of interesting projects going on. I kind of want to go around the panel and start off just talking a little bit about, what you're working on in the upcycled food space and your company and your project. So start with Carolyn.
Thanks so much, Sam. Great to be here with all of you. So Renewal Mill is a next generation ingredients company that's taking the byproducts right now of plant-based milk and turning those into gluten-free flours. So we started with the byproduct of soy milk production, which is called okara, and turn that into a high fiber gluten-free flour that we sell as an ingredient for other businesses to use, and also use in some of our own CPG products.
Cool.
Yeah.
Dan?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dan Kurzrock, co-founder, chief grain officer of ReGrained. I'm also co-founded the Upcycled Food Association, and on the board with Caroline there. And it's so exciting to be with everyone here. I actually started upcycling before there was really a word for it. We kind of helped coin that back in 2009, 2010, when I started brewing my own beer underage in college and discovered that there was a kind of secret edible powerhouse that was left behind from that process. And we've built a business powered by some technology that we developed with the USDA to close the loop for the first time on the grain byproduct from the brewing industry back into ingredients and finished food products, which you can find ReGrained products in a bunch of stores and online now. And we are just thrilled to be, one of the leaders in helping to kind of build this movement. The fact that there is a upcycling panel and a food waste focus at Grow New York is just, I think, a real testament to the times and, the potential ahead of us for what we're building. And so it's just super exciting. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, glad to have you. There must be something a little bit about brewing, because that's also home brewing in college is what got me into food science. So
that's right.
One of the businesses. Yeah, and
our mothers are proud.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not what they expected, right? What are you doing? Adam, yeah, tell us a bit about you and the Spare Food Company.
Thank you. Thanks. Well, firstly, it's great to be here and to be on a panel with good friends as well, which is always fun. I just feel lucky that I'm on the East Coast and not on the West Coast right now. So kudos to you two guys for being up and bright and early. So the Spare Food Company, I'm the co-founder and the chief culinary officer of the Spare Food Company. We launched in 2018. We are a value-add ingredient platform that specifically uses culinary innovation to create better for you, better for the planet, food and beverages. Really by looking at ingredient streams from farms all the way to processors that are currently being either unused or underutilized. Our first product that we're going to be launching in the early part of 2021 is a probiotic beverage, a tonic made from the co-product of the strained yogurt industry from acid whey. So that'll be product number one on our platform, with many in development behind again, always based around specific ingredient streams that we identify at scale in the food system.
Yeah, I love whey and I love seeing people play with it. So I'm excited to get to taste that tonic come the start of the year. So cool. And then, you mentioned it's friends. I feel like having now kind of been in the upcycled space and doing some research here, that it's a little tight community. So there's a lot of interesting things going on, and this whole Upcycled Food Association to kind of try to bring people together. Caroline, could you talk about that? And Dan, feel free to pitch in too. I know you guys have both worked a lot on that, and a little bit about what you guys are doing there and what the mission is and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really knew that we wanted to have sort of a rising tides lift all boats mentality to really make the upcycling food a movement. And so last October, 10 companies came together to found the Upcycled Food Association. And over the last year, we've grown from 10 companies to over 120 companies, including some really big names like Dole Foods. The first directive of the organization was kind of to formally define what upcycled food is, because before this, there was no formal definition. So we worked with researchers at Harvard and Drexel University, as well as a bunch of industry experts to release that formal definition in April of this year. And then we're using that definition as sort of the cornerstone of creating a product certification program so that we can certify products as upcycled the way that you would certify them as organic or non-GMO, and have that right on front of pack to sort of build consumer awareness and trust around this growing movement. So yeah, Adam and Dan are both members of the Upcycled Food Association. We're really excited to keep spreading that awareness.
Yeah, and in that spirit, actually, right now, there's a draft of the first ever upcycled certification standard on upcycledfood.org, and it's open for public comment. So anyone who's really interested in that, we'd actually really value your input on how the standard looks and any changes that might be made. The whole spirit behind why we started this association together is that, look, like food waste is a market failure, right? It makes sense to nobody anywhere in the food system. And the way that you solve market failures is through cross-sectoral collaboration, including, non-competitive or pre-competitive collaboration between industry peers. And that's really what we're looking to do here. And we've had a really exciting first year, and where we go from here forward, largely depends on, the involvement of the community, like some of you here in the audience. So please feel empowered to get involved. We'd really like you to join us.
Yeah. So I know then it's in draft form, and so there's going to be some comments and some changes on the final thing. But what are, I guess, some of the rough outlines that define an upcycled food?
Yeah, I mean, the real key thing here is that upcycled foods use ingredients that would have otherwise gone to lower use. And so what we're doing is we're tackling food waste by prioritizing the highest use according to the EPA's food recovery hierarchy, which is feeding people. So sometimes it's easier to illustrate through examples, and actually this board this panel here is an excellent one. If you look at ingredients like okara from soy milk, tofu production, there's no way to create that product without also creating a co-product. But more with beer, it takes about a pound of grain to brew every 6-pack of beer. You add that up in the U.S. alone, that's 20 billion pounds of grain that, for the beer making process, it's only extracted the sugars from it. So what's left behind has a lot of nutritional value. It's got some functional properties. It's got flavor. Chef Adam can attest to the flavor of a lot of these upcycled ingredients. And the the key here is putting them back, into consumption for human, for human food, and that required in all kinds of processing innovation in some cases. Like we actually have a patent on how we do that, culinary creativity, like what Chef Adam's talking about. And it's kind of a new mentality, around what's a pretty common sense business objective, right? Like, hey, let's make sure that we're turning trash into money, basically. You see that with, Adam was talking about how he's working with the strained yogurt industry and acid whey. If you look at the another side of dairy processing with cheese, you've got sweet whey, and that's whey protein, right? There's a very robust market that's already been developed for that. And so what we're really systematically looking to do is identify all these other overlooked, underutilized resources that are in the food system, that could be put to best use by feeding people.
And
I think what Dan is also bringing up here is really important, is really expanding this definition of what we consider food, actually, that it really is so much more than excuse the pun, but the sort of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, of the more common offenders that people think about, whether it's ugly fruits and vegetables or expired dairy products, or people's, what people are throwing out in their own homes, but actually looking at that items that perhaps people don't even consider to be food in the first place. And I think part of this is really redefining what it is we've been talking about here, that it's really, we talk about it at the Spare Food Company, and this certainly comes out of my work as a chef, is of seeing the unseen. And kind of once you see this, you really can't unsee it. And it's in all facets. If you look at the entire continuum of food production, from growing on farms into production and distribution, at all points along the spectrum there, you will see products that you had not seen before that have culinary value.
And I think, Sam, also one key part of the definition is the environmental impact of this. So why we're doing this is because food waste is such a large driver of climate change. And so we're really trying to make sure we can quantify that impact as well, and say, like, we're not just doing this for grins and giggles, but actually because it's better for the environment and better for you. As Dan was saying, there's a lot of fiber and other nutrition processed out that we can keep on people's plates.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of leftover nutrition that I think is a key piece in a lot of these, wasted products. So, and then, just to, and Dan, I saw you commented there, I was going to bring in that question. So really, for when we're talking about upcycled food, when we're talking about food waste, it's like you said, Dan, that higher level in that model where it's going back to human consumption. So not necessarily going to fertilizer or to animal feed or something like that, right? That's kind of is that kind of there?
Yeah, that'd be more recycling for organic materials going into fertilizer. What we're really, it's not that we're anything above landfill is great, but for the difference is, like, consider, a banana peel or eggshells, versus, barley that's all protein and fiber, right? That can be, turned back into ingredients. So if it has nutritional value and it can be, safely processed into ingredients, and the idea here is to put them to best use, And then there's lower rungs of the hierarchy that are still better than landfill for the environment, but we're ultimately about promoting best use.
And then also coming in from the audience, how is everyone here that's part of this Upcycled Food Association? How are you, I guess, pushing this message to consumers, right? So they understand what it means. I know we're still pretty early, but what's the plan around that?
Yeah, I think we're really excited about this certification seal because it centralizes the messaging. I think everybody who's started one of these companies has struggled with how do I message, wasted food on pack and really get across the message in 3 to 5 seconds to have the consumer really understand the full picture of what we're doing. So we're hoping that the seal will help with that, as well as spreading awareness because there's multiple companies using it, including these like really big players in the grocery store who own multiple brands and can put it on front of pack, and it's right next to organic or rainforest certified or things like that. So yeah, I think Dan and Adam, feel free to weigh in, but that's why Renewal Mill is super excited about the seal.
Yeah, I mean, getting it on pack, right, for the member companies is going to be huge. The other thing the Upcycled Food Association has as a kind of sibling organization is the Upcycled Food Foundation, which is really focused on consumer education efforts and engaging, retailers, for example, and in the investment community, and everyone on increasing that awareness. Because what can happen then is you think of that retailer, not only, maybe in the private label program, could there be upcycled products like Caroline was talking about, but also think of, end caps, that are featuring like, an actual section of the store is basically what I mean. Sorry to use the jargon that it's actually curating, these products, or on these, online grocery has been huge in the last year. And what we've been able to do is help actually get some of these platforms that are out there, both for wholesale and for consumers, like Thrive Market's a great example, to actually focus on upcycling as a new category that people can filter and search by. And then that becomes something that actively gets curated. Actually, this year, we were successful in getting Whole Foods Market actually to name upcycling as a top 10 trend for 2021. I mean, that is like the trend report that the industry worldwide looks at for what's coming next. And so by coming together and really having a much louder, much more unified voice about what upcycling is, why it's important, why it's delicious, and getting these products out in the marketplace, we're able to do that because it's a new term, but it's an idea that's intuitive. Actually, we're finding for most people, we just have to help them realize that this is the next best thing that they didn't realize they were waiting for.
Yeah, and talking about, there's a whole big entrepreneurship kind of competition here with Grow New York, and I'm sure there's a lot of people interested in getting in this space and understanding some of the challenges. So it's kind of, thinking back to when you all started in this space, what were some of the challenges in, dealing with, food waste as your primary ingredient? What did you have to overcome? Was it challenging? How did you start sourcing those ingredients? Because sometimes, at least in my experience, sometimes it can be very difficult to get someone to give you something that's consistent and that's treated well. So.
Yeah, I can jump in here just initially, and I'm sure there'll probably be a fair amount of crossover. I think you nailed something right there. Is a consistency of product, getting something consistency. But I think before you even get to that point, it's really this idea of rewiring a system that is kind of set up to view these ingredient streams. And again, I use the word ingredient streams. I'm not using the word as a waste stream. A system that is set up to view these ingredient streams as having lesser or no value, and in many cases, especially at scale, where there's very complex, intricate, expensive methods set up to eradicate these ingredient streams at the source. So how do you change the value system around these products from the first place, to get people, to get manufacturers to actually see that this is actually something that has value? And then you start working through these challenges of, well, how do you sequester it? How do you keep it safe? How do you, where up to that point it is not being handled as a food product per se. How is it consistent? How is it being transported, et cetera? There are just so many levels that you have to work through. to basically break through a system that was never set up to view these ingredients as an ingredient in the first place.
Yeah, and I think the practical result of that is that what you get with a lot of upcycled food companies, at least the pioneers of this, is we've got vertically integrated supply chains for our main ingredient. So even many of the companies, all of us here that are actually creating finished products as well, we're also developing and processing our key ingredient, and that's because we really need to focus on rescuing the stuff in line. I'll never forget when we made the jump from using home brewing and actually using our own grain to make bread, which we were like selling to friends, to make beer for free, and started doing like farmers markets and things like that to really test the message and figure out those back in the day when we called everything Eat Beer. It was super fun, and we made the jump to picking up our first batch from a craft brewer because we actually ran out of inventory of our own byproduct for the first time. And they said, "Oh yeah, come by, pick it up, no problem." And we showed up, and this grain was being kept in effectively a dumpster right behind the brewery itself. It was not food safe. We realized, oh wow, like we need to get much more dialed in and coordinated with these breweries so that we can come in and rescue this in a food safe way and take it from their food safe process into our food safe process. And it's gotten a lot more sophisticated from then. We also had another example early on where we came to pick up some grain, and it's supposed to be just barley mostly, right? That's been used to brew, and the brewery was making an oyster stout. And the brewer offered me oysters in the morning, and then a light bulb went off. I was like, wait a minute, like, how are the oysters incorporated? Oh, well, actually, we do it in a really innovative way. We actually mix the oysters in with the grain. I was like, oh, well, this is a shellfish allergy now, right? Like, this is not. And so as we've scaled, what we've done is established, great partnerships with breweries that are, in our case, we actually even have a supply chain agreement with Molson Coors Brewing Company, because we need breweries that are making it, at least to start building the market, that are making consistent beer in the same way, every single time. So to get a consistent source, we've gotten a lot more sophisticated over time by necessity to do this, safely and practically. And I think there's a lot of similar challenges and successes that the pioneers of the upcycled food movement have had to do in order to kind of establish this in a way that's gonna work.
I think one piece that I know Dan has worked on too is also like regulation around these new ingredients and how you get them labeled. So we were really lucky starting with Okara. It was already an FDA, USDA recognized ingredient, but for a lot of other byproduct streams, that's not the case. And so you have to get it recognized as a novel ingredient, which can be a very long, challenging process, especially like if we're thinking outside of the US as well. Europe has really strict restrictions, and we've been working with companies like Barilla to try to realize, is this a new novel ingredient? If so, what does that process look like? It can be a multi-year process to get that recognized.
Yeah, there are all those pieces. And, capturing then the good question from the audience here, capturing that value, where does then that value capture from these upcycled ingredients, where does that fall? Is that within the entrepreneurs? Is it within the company that you're sourcing it from? Does it go all the way back to the farmers?
I mean, there's definitely shared value that's created, and it doesn't go directly back to the farmers, and in most cases, because actually some upcycled food companies are kind of post-harvest, and so for example, there's some companies that are very focused on like chocolate and coffee, which are, I think, great examples of upcycled supply chains. With coffee specifically, there's two other crops now that are being upcycled as a part of the coffee plant. There's the fruit, which is the cherry that's kind of separated from the bean that's been upcycled by a number of companies, and also the leaf that's can be harvested year round, as opposed to the coffee fruit and bean, which is once a year. And in that case, there's like shared value that's created with the farmer. When you're dealing with us on the panel, we're all focused on kind of the post-processing, side of things. And so, for our supply chain is that, the brewery or the soy processor or the yogurt maker. And then, we're creating value for them by removing what's sometimes a cost or a risk, and, creating our products, which we then are creating value for our customers, which could, include other food businesses that are looking to create products that are more marketable because they're great tasting and better for you and the planet, and they're able to, create awesome products that can increase their market share, that are innovative, in that way. And ultimately for the end customer at home who can get, products that taste good and kind of meet their needs for, an active, healthy lifestyle. And what we hope also is kind of shift their mentality about what waste is and what opportunity exists, because a huge percentage of food waste actually happens at home. And so one of the other exciting things about upcycling is it can get people, if it's done well, to be, kind of rethinking, food as a resource and start to look at, other parts of their lives and how they can get better too. We're not like super preachy necessarily about that, but we certainly hope that we're inspiring, action in that regard.
And that kind of leads into some great questions from the audience that are around that point. Also, a lot of us are focused on food waste within the food supply chain, right, on the manufacturing production side. But there is a lot on the consumer end and at home. Dan, you talk about kind of leading some of the principles there. And Adam, what are the opportunities for people at home too on the upcycled food front?
Yeah, I think firstly, what Dan said is spot on, and something we speak a lot about. I know my partner, my brother, has spoken about this to me a lot. This idea of how do you get into 130 million households and effectively change people's behavior? It is quite a challenge when we know that a good portion of food waste is being created in the home. I think there are. Firstly, I think Dan's right. I think products out there will get people thinking. If it's a delicious product that people suddenly have in their pantry or in their fridge, it starts to create a consciousness about what the perception is around these ingredients, and hopefully will change people's behaviors. I think there's just simple tips and tricks around shopping more thoughtfully, and as a trained chef, I always think just cook more, and getting people to cook more and cook with whole ingredients is a great way to just deal with this in the household. But it is a challenge, and not only in households but also in consumer-facing businesses that are feeding millions and millions of people on a daily basis. It's a little different now in the era of COVID, but you just look at food service, for example, pre-COVID, where amongst the big three food service companies alone, 6 billion meals being served daily in this country, and the potential for waste to be occurring at that scale. So also working at scale with large scale food service companies, hospitality companies, also really allows us to create a consciousness and awareness around this issue.
And then making people more aware, and then also getting people to talk about upcycled foods, right? Whether it's eating more, maybe not quite more conservatively, but thinking about your food at home, and then the type of products that you buy. So when you hear the word waste, right? I think we've talked a little bit about how does a consumer handle that? Like, do I want to eat a waste product if it's not good? What are the keys there? What have you done on messaging and then delivering products that kind of flip that script in their heads?
I think it's a lot about framing. So, we try not to frame it as waste. It's, wasted food, right? It's nutrition that's leaving the system. But taste is always going to be king, especially when it comes to talking about a consumer product. So it has to taste good first and foremost. Consumers, as much as they tell you that they want to purchase because of sustainability reasons, they're going to care what the product tastes like. So that it has to be a great tasting product. And that also helps buoy the whole movement if the products that we're making as upcyclers are delicious or functional, like in the case of other beverages and stuff. So I think starting there is super important. And then once you've kind of had that entry point, you can have a larger conversation about, like, if you have a choice between two products, why would you choose the one that's an upcycled product over that, and really put that power to affect environmental change back in the hands of the consumer?
I think probably we would all agree here that ultimately what we're striving for is a post-food waste world, right? And really to get beyond the fact that we should even one day have a panel about food waste, right? and for me, what I find fascinating, and again, I've been cooking professionally as a chef for very long, for over a quarter of a century now. I also just take so much inspiration just from culinary tradition, right? That what we're doing here is actually, it's not a new concept. This is as old as food and as eating and as people, dealing with their natural resources is. And, when I say, you could throw a map at a dart at a map of the world and land on some culinary tradition that is built around this idea of utilizing everything in your food system. The idea of waste was unconscionable historically, and the idea that you wouldn't use certain parts of plants or animals, that you would just discard it, wasn't even a concept. So when you go to, I don't know, just pick a dish, you go to a French restaurant and you have, classic dish like coq au vin, right? You're not thinking, boy, I'm going to order a dish made up of a really tough old chicken that's been braised in wine, right? You think, boy, I just it's a delicious dish. I love it. I want to eat it, right? It was never marketed as a tough old bird that was braised in wine, and the same for, I don't know, Bubble and Squeak in the UK, or you could just sort of run through these examples. And I think there's something that we can learn from those traditions. And I think Carolyn really hit the nail on the head. It's got to be delicious first. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. I think you change people's hearts and minds through their palates, and I think that's how we start to change people's perceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's really well put. The short comment that I'll add to the end of that is kind of this distinction between a reason for purchase and a reason for loyalty, with the customer. And upcycling, while it may be a reason for purchase, for some, what I think, at least what I really believe, and what we found with ReGrained, is it's a reason for loyalty. But people will only buy a product because it tastes like a good idea once, right? And so, it's got to meet those other things. And by the way, this is also like, let's make the right thing the easy thing. That's really what we're all about here.
Yeah. And then to Adam's point there, trying to live in a post food waste world, is there kind of a little challenge here where, if we become really successful at upcycling these, wasted ingredients, do they just then become ingredients and are no longer upcycled? Do we end up is there a future where the term upcycled food is not a thing?
It's a good question. It's definitely one we certainly talk in terms of, hey, we don't want to like put ourselves out of business necessarily. That's not the way to think about it. But where it becomes more expected, and I think just like when you want to know, in an ingredient panel, when an ingredient is organic, or if it's regenerative organic, right, is kind of the next wave of that, or how it's sourced, fair trade. It's another reason to feel good about a product. So if you're purchasing something, it doesn't necessarily need to be 100% upcycled, but if you know that there's impact beyond positive impact, benefit that's being created from that purchase, I think that's always going to be a kind of a feel good driver for folks, and just hopefully the situation with our home planet becomes less dire over time, and it's just something that we can feel good about without kind of that doom and gloom concern, which is on all of our minds today.
Yeah, and I think also, when you think about version 2.0, right, as people factor in, right, sustainability, environmental impact, right, as those kind of information makes its way onto the pack, right, people have been talking about different labels and things like that. Perhaps that is now the new way, right, because you're an upcycled food, right, you're going to naturally be a more sustainable product, right, hopefully. And so that maybe that'll keep it going, right, in a sense. No.
I think if we've created enough value for these ingredients that they become mainstream, that's a huge win. And we're still far off from that. So yeah, I think if that's the case, and we've, as mission driven brands, we're able to bring these into the mainstream and significantly reduce the total food waste, I think we would all consider that a success.
Perhaps version 2.0 will be the Holistic Food Association.
Right. Oh, so then, yeah, the holistic, the big picture. So, kind of going back maybe a little bit more to the entrepreneurship kind of angle of this kind of startup. What were some key moments for you, when getting into market, right? Was there like an aha moment on, maybe either on taste or positioning for you guys when you were bringing these new products to life? Maybe everyone's thinking it was just a natural flow from the start, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I just was, I know I'm kind of talking a lot. I got really excited about this stuff. For us, we didn't really know how to talk about this early on. I mean, this was before food waste really didn't enter the kind of the common, awareness of folks really until the landmark NRDC report, I would argue, Wasted, authored by Dana Gunders, which was first published in 2014. Is that right? So somewhere around then. And it's been, since then, it's really taken the world by storm. It's this really, the world's dumbest problem, right? As a lot of us like to say. When we first started making upcycled food products, people weren't really talking about food waste or anything like that. We just felt like it was a common sense concept that did a really good job of, or at least had a lot of potential of, being a business model where we could do well by authentically doing good. We just knew we had to get people's attention. And so for us, we had this aha moment when we came up with the tagline. I mentioned it earlier, eat beer. Just 2 words, plain and simple, that created some cognitive dissonance for people. It was kind of interesting because it actually was one of the reasons why we were able to get a lot of press really early on and kind of help, catalyze, awareness about, upcycling and whatnot from the start. But what we learned was that it actually was a bit of a false positive with consumers. So we'd get people's attention with this idea of eat beer, looked great on a T-shirt or on a hat. I know Adam has one on his desk. It's still a lot of fun to do that. You get people kind of craning their necks when they'd walk by your booth somewhere, and you'd say, "Oh yeah, eat beer. Like, let me tell you more about that." But we learned that on pack, it actually confused people. And so people, you're starting with, this idea, expectation of, does this have alcohol in it? Does it taste like beer? Does it, can my kids have this? That sort of thing. And so we shifted our messaging from being more, that was kind of, it was very punchy and it got people's attention and earned, some opportunity to say what we're all about, but have shifted more to like flavor forward, nutrition forward, focusing on kind of less niche, more universally understood, I guess, value, of what we're doing. So that was some of the detail of the arc that we've gone through with ReGrained. And I know my friends here have had their own experiences to that end.
Yeah, for us, I think an aha moment was we started going to trade shows with this novel ingredient, okara, that nobody had ever heard of. And we showed up with literature, we're trying to tell people about it. And they're like, but what does it taste like? And so we quickly found out that we needed sort of a familiar vehicle to introduce a novel ingredient through. So we started with a soft baked chocolate chip cookie, sort of America's favorite cookie, and saying, if we introduce okara to this, it still tastes great. It still has all of these benefits over another sort of convenience store cookie. And then from there have moved more into the baking aisle, because we're selling this ingredient as a flour. So we wanted to be in that aisle with something like a brownie mix. And we're going down the line of baking mixes where we can use multiple ingredients, including the okara in that product. But again, it's a familiar vehicle. So it's like getting people to dip their toe in the water and then say, oh, this is what upcycled food is about. And then I can kind of take that leap even further.
I think both Dan and Carolyn, are really right about this, that I think coming out of the starting blocks and tethering this idea to something that is is familiar, at least, is really important. I remember the first time somebody actually gave me, it was an early version of ReGrained's bar, their sort of granola bar product. This was some years ago. It wasn't like, it was something that I eat bars, I eat energy bars. It sort of fell within my range of experience and things, products that I like. And then it was, it's a better version of that product, or it has this additional veneer of the sustainability story. I think that's really important. I think to be able to work within categories, and ultimately, I think the responsibility for all of us will be to define new categories as we go along in this journey. But I think in all these cases, these are better for you, better for the planet versions of what already exists out there. And I think if we can really capitalize on that, I think we'll get a lot of traction.
Yeah, it's building a version 2.0, right, of a lot of things that we already know. And then, thinking about this, this building, this entrepreneurship, and, we want to help the planet. We want to be more sustainable, but we've also got to build, right, sustainable businesses, right, that, make money, that employ people and things like that. So when it comes to sourcing these ingredients, there's a question from the audience, around cost of those. Are these, kind of undervalued ingredients, are they less expensive? Does that improve our margins? Or does the fact that they're not taken care of well actually then complicate things, because then you have to change the way they're treated? How's that work for everybody?
I think it's a huge misconception from a lot of people that we're selling upcycled ingredients to, is that because it's upcycled, it automatically must be lower cost or free or no cost. But in fact, to sort of Adam's earlier point, when we were talking about sourcing them, there's a lot of work that goes into making them food safe, that goes into making them actually marketable. And so that processing cost is not insignificant. And in fact, we're kind of marketing it as a premium ingredient. A lot of the times in our case, we're sourcing organic, 100% non-GMO product that is, in the case of a tofu company, 60% of these organic soybeans that they put a lot of work into sourcing are going out as okara. And so capturing that value is not an insignificant task. And so when we market it, we're like comparing it to other premium gluten-free flours in the market, like coconut flour, quinoa flour, or things like the almond flour, rather than just a base commodity.
And it's a matter of scale too, right? So, we're at the beginning of this, and, what each of us talked about earlier, around like setting up our own supply chains, for this. That's, we're building a market. We're creating a market that ultimately, we can serve at scale, and cost, cost will come down. The key driver behind the patented technology that we developed is the ability to do this economically at scale. And the cost of the inputs, are cheap or free. That's true. But there's also strategic value in building the market, starting with premium and creating hero applications, right, where these products are then being marketed as upcycled food products. And eventually, do we all hope? I mean, I certainly hope that this model is something that can be brought all over the world, the global south, and places where we can actually, food waste does not cause hunger, right? But, with upcycling, there is an opportunity to reduce waste and feed people together, at scale. And eventually, I think that's the world that we're all creating together. But there's still time that we need to build the market, and it's gonna, these costs will come down. But the other thing that's, and Adam, I know you know a lot about this too. There's a lot, and so maybe something you can speak to if you'd like. The paradigm that we're in now, there's a lot of subsidies as well, and other ways that the true cost of virgin ingredients is kind of artificially low as well. And so, kind of, we're not selling these as like substitutes for all-purpose, bread, wheat flour, for example. And there are a lot of reasons for that. And I don't know, Adam, if you want to speak to that, or wherever you want to go with that.
I agree. And again, this goes back to what I said earlier about really expanding the definition of what it is we're talking about here. Yes, these are premium products. These do have value. They're not commodified or subsidized. And I think what we're all trying to do here is retain as much value in the food system as possible. I know when I first started working in this sector about 6 years ago, one of the most common questions to me was, well, do you get the ingredients for free? And the response always was, if we're going to be talking about lost value in the food system, we need to be prescribing or ascribing some sort of value to these ingredients. And so the other thing also is you bring up subsidies, Dan. It is interesting also that just our entire food system is really predicated upon waste. It is really built around waste at all levels and things that we don't even consider. Just, for example, planting about a third of this country in corn and soy to convert into animal proteins. It seems like an inherently wasteful system right there, correct? So we really do need to look really deeper into the system as a whole of how we produce our food and how and what we ascribe value to.
Talking a little bit about subsidies and I guess how regulatory agencies can kind of help push this whole food waste solutions. What are we seeing out there? Do you think, I know in New York, we just passed some legislation where the aim is to drive to make sure that valuable food doesn't end up in the landfills and things like that. So there's going to be incentives or penalties, for companies that don't do that. Do you think those kind of things will help, or what other mechanisms do we need in place to help promote reutilization of these byproducts? And Carolyn, you talked a little bit about are they novel ingredients that need to then be validated, or are they really ingredients that might have had a history in culinary cultures hundreds of years ago, and we're just rediscovering them? What thoughts on that? What can government agencies do?
I think the legislations are definitely helping, organic waste bans, things like that, where these byproducts are huge headaches for manufacturers and they need a solution because of government oversight. And then as an upcycling company, we're able to help them and be that solution. It's a benefit for them, and we're able to take that headache off their hands. So I think that's really important, and we should see that throughout the country. I know California has been kind of a leader in that space, but definitely need a state-by-state approach there. And then as far as novel ingredients, yeah, I think it is a lot of just rediscovering sort of rich culinary history from around the world and just being more open to, I know, as Adam has said a few times, what is food and why do we have this very narrow scope? I think one place that we've seen it really be an interesting thing is also in the pet food space. Pet food is actually harder to sell into in a lot of cases than human food because they have very strict definition of what can be certain things. So even ingredients like in the case of okara that have been defined for sort of human use might not necessarily be defined for pet use. And there's sort of this sort of lines in the sand that have been drawn that are kind of arbitrary. So I think, going back to basics and figuring out who can use these ingredients and what are we defining as food is really important.
Yeah, look, I mean, if we take a step back and look at food waste as a market failure, and if you take an economist's view of what a market failure is, there's actually some pretty well-defined tools that we have in our toolbox from a regulatory perspective to solve market failures. One is to the two main ones are to either to tax, right? So to internalize some of the true costs of some of these things. Don't necessarily advocate, for that, and in this case, but just kind of to lay these out, or to incentivize, right? There's kind of the carrot or the stick approach, around internalizing negative externalities and incentivizing positive externalities in the economy. And there's also things around like information asymmetry, right? And actually making sure that supply and demand know what's going on and can talk to each other, and kind of connect those dots. And, Adam's actually got a really great example of the regulatory environment and like why there's so many strained yogurt producers in New York. I mean, is that something that you think is worth sharing, Adam, and kind of connecting the needle there?
I mean, my understanding of the situation, actually, Sam could potentially throw more light on this, but yes, there is the access to great dairy, but there is a political history to it as well around the cottage cheese lobby, from my understanding, and New York State being sort of the capital of the cottage cheese production, and the ease of slightly laxer whey disposal laws that came out through the pressures of that industry. So yeah, there's a lot of intrigue behind a lot of these products, I think, that are out there, and why we do see them in such prevalence, and why perhaps they aren't being regulated. It's very hard. I know, Sam, you may have something to add to this, but for example, it's very hard to get hard statistics about how much whey actually is being produced, and just using whey, for example, and you speak to the DEC in New York State, and they have a hard time in their organics department pinning down those numbers because companies are pretty tight-lipped about it. So again, is there a way to incentivize a change in that behavior? Perhaps yes, to your point there.
Yeah, no, I think it is, dairy has done a lot of work on, adding value, right? We talked about sweet whey earlier, right? We're finding that, but there are also challenges, right? But I think, government agencies here in New York have been very forward thinking. When I look at the work that we've been doing for that led into Norway in my lab, right? That was all started by a grant from the DEC saying, hey, we have an acid whey, challenge here in New York State. How do we fund solutions? How do we get research into this space to actually develop solutions that add value? And I think it's been very fruitful, right? Because that initial grant led to CapRoX, which was one of the Grow New York finalists and one of the winners last year, right? Was funded through that grant. Our work has been funded through that grant. And so that is pushing forward. And even from the farmer perspective, here's some of our byproduct utilization on whey utilization has been funded through dairy farmers and some checkup dollar research money, right? To again, find solutions to drive sustainability for dairy. So I think, as this discussion, as Dan had said, right, this concept of upcycled foods and things like that is still relatively new. And as it's kind of permeating into the consciousness, we're seeing more efforts from all levels, government, farmers, producers, right, to kind of then turn this around. So I think that's a big opportunity. Yeah. And I'm kind of looking here. We've got a few more questions. Kind of going back to pricing on this kind of stuff when we're putting it out to consumers, and we talked a little bit about the challenges of sourcing the ingredients and maybe making it. Are upcycled foods then really more of a premium product, or do you think they're going to become a lower, a lower price product compared to the standard thing that's in the market? I think we're seeing I see an argument for premium, but I guess that's always that cognitive dissonance between waste and value, right?
Yeah, and we strive for. So we have finished products that we sell through into distribution, along with the ingredients that we do. Our main product focus right now is a salty snack. It's like a gourmet chip, but it's not actually priced at a premium relative to what is considered to be premium in the market. It's more, we more try to bring products to market that are at least at parity, with non-upcycled products. And then because we have a premium value proposition on top of that, we hope that will be an added reason for purchase. But for example, we have a multi-serve bag, which will find its way on shelves for, it's 4 servings in a bag. So think of like, not your standard like 1 ounce chip bag that you might get with a sandwich, but kind of a smaller bag with multiple servings. We have 4 servings per bag. We're at a $3.99 price point. We're sitting on the shelf next to other products that are $4.99 or more. That's like more of a grocery store price, like bodegas and things like that in New York. Would have higher. There's a whole different bar depending on which channel you're selling into. But we're not seeing and we're deliberately not bringing products to market where we have to be at an ultra premium price point because we want the right thing to be the easy thing for folks, but we're also not trying to have a race for the bottom. We're not trying to have the absolute lowest price out there. And while upcycled food can bring some economic advantages, it really pales in comparison to what like true economies of scale is for like at least in the packaged foods industry. Companies that are you take our first product line, which was a bar, as an example. There's several now huge companies that are making bars. There's actually hundreds, if not thousands, of players that are in the space, and automated lines and things like that. They can get their per unit pricing, if that's the only thing they're focused on, down extremely low. That's who we hope I think all of us on at least Caroline and myself with Renewal Mill and ReGrained, like we're looking to sell to those companies that are at that scale so we can increase our impact in that way, not compete with them on price today as we're building the market.
We're getting to the last couple of minutes. Are there, any, last words of inspiration or comment on this market for people who want to get in there or consumers that want to buy?
I would just say the biggest hurdle that we all have to overcome is still consumer education, as we kind of like kick this off at the beginning. So if everybody tells one friend about upcycled food, that goes a long way in helping us spread this message of what we're doing and why it's important. And just to reiterate Dan's point of commenting on the certification standard, we're really trying to get that out in front of folks. So definitely go to upcycledfood.org and check that out.
I would also just add that especially now more than ever with a growing population, more mouths to feed, there's this constant race to get more productive, to get higher yields, and then there's also this sort of prevailing philosophy or idea that we should be doing more with less, and I would actually argue that we should be turning this idea on its head, and we should really be thinking about doing more with more. We should be doing more with more of what we already have, what we've already grown and produced. I think that's ultimately what all of us are trying to do here is really maximize the value of our food system and really I think our products will ultimately ask more questions than answer questions, perhaps, and I think there's something to be said for that.
I love that. And look, like we all have a role to play here. There's probably a good representation of different different types of groups in the audience here. If you're a customer, that could mean buying more upcycled foods, right? If you are work for a food company, looking at upcycling as a supply chain innovation and a way to actually make an impact through product development. If you're a retailer, you can put these products on your shelves. If you're an investor, you can bring more capital into the space and invest in these solutions. Actually, I think potentially all 4 of our companies are actually raising money right now. I know at least Renewal Mill and ReGrained, we actually have an active equity crowdfunding campaign that's out there strategically, as a way to bring more investors into the space, even in a smaller check size capacity, to create champions for this movement. And so no matter where you are in the value chain, you're a part of this ecosystem for better food for everyone forever, and that's really what we're trying to do. And so I really hope that everyone can just feel empowered to take action in one way or another and participate in this movement that we're creating.
And I agree. It's let's do more, right, with what we've got. Let's do more with more. That was a great statement. And I want to thank everyone for coming. Carolyn, Dan, Adam, thank you for being here discussing. Thanks to the audience for your wonderful questions. I hope everyone is seeing the excitement, the opportunities, and the potential impact that Upcycled Foods has, for our daily lives, our health, the planet, and everything. And I want to encourage everyone, we're finishing up here, but please stick around. Next up, we're going to be kicking off the start of today's pitches. We're going to get to see 4 ag tech teams pitch to win that $1 million. So we'll pass it off to them and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thanks.